So in this video, we're going to see about the functions of placenta. So this has been asked previously as a short essay question, as such like what are the functions of placenta, and add a note on feto-placental unit. So we'll see how to approach when such a question is asked. I always say we have to start the answer with an introduction. So for this answer, we can write the development of placenta in the introduction. That is, placenta is formed when a blastocyst gets implanted, and it is formed from these cells. That is, we've got the cytotrophoblast cells and syncytiotrophoblaст cells, and these cells then form the placenta, which provides the nutrition which is essential for the growing fetus, right? Then you can also mention about the a rough anatomy of the placenta. You can tell about the presence of cotyledons on the maternal aspect and the fetal membranes along with the umbilical cord on the fetal aspect. You can also maybe mention about the different villi which you study in anatomy. But as far as physiology is concerned, just a brief introduction about the anatomy would be enough. Then you can move on to the functions of the placenta. So mainly, you know that the main function of the placenta is a respiratory function. It is a placenta which provides oxygen and removes carbon dioxide from the fetus. Then we've got nutritive and storage function, excretory function, immunological function, and endocrine function. So these are the major 5 functions of the placenta. So we'll see each one by one. I said before, the most important one is a respiratory function. So of the respiratory function, we can divide into 2 types. One, the diffusion of oxygen, and other, the diffusion of carbon dioxide. So oxygen diffuses from the maternal to the fetal blood via the placental membranes by simple diffusion. So it is by simple diffusion that the blood flows out, or the oxygen flows out from this maternal sinuses to the fetal part, right? So the maternal PO2 in the sinusoids is 50 millimeters of mercury, and the fetal blood PO2 after oxygenation is just 30 millimeters of mercury. So here you can see that these are the maternal sinusoids, right? From here, the oxygen is being transferred to these fetal vessels, okay? And thus these vessels will carry that oxygenated blood. Now the interesting fact is the fetal PO2 of oxygen is just, or the partial pressure of oxygen in the fetal blood vessels is just 30. So how is the fetus going to be oxygenated by such a low partial pressure? So we've got interesting reason for that. So see, even though it is just 30 millimeters of mercury, still it can carry enough oxygen for fetus due to that the fetal hemoglobin has more affinity for oxygen, that is binds oxygen even at a low PO2. See, we know that the fetal hemoglobin is different from adult hemoglobin, and it has more affinity. So remember in respiratory physiology we learn about this oxygen dissociation curve. So this is an adult oxygen dissociation curve, whereas this is a fetal oxygen dissociation curve because of the difference in the hemoglobin. So see here, see at around 30 millimeters of mercury, the maternal blood will only be around 60% saturated with oxygen. But whereas the fetal, for at that same partial pressure, the fetal blood will be more saturated, say around maybe 80%. So that's a difference between the oxygen dissociation curve of the maternal as well as the fetal side. So fetal hemoglobin has more affinity for oxygen, that is binds oxygen even at a low PO2. Not only that, the RBC count is much higher. So because of that, the hemoglobin concentration is more than 50% greater. And also there is something called double Bohr effect. Now this is a very important point. What is double Bohr effect? See, in respiratory physiology we have learned about Bohr effect and Haldane effect. So here also there is a double Bohr effect which will help in easier diffusion of oxygen. What is that? The carbon dioxide leaves the fetal blood and enters into maternal circulation. Okay, so from the fetal blood, the carbon dioxide moves on to the maternal circulation. So what will happen? There will be low PCO2 in the fetal blood. This in turn will facilitate the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin in the fetal blood. See, carbon dioxide has gone from the fetal blood. So oxygen, it will be easier for oxygen to bind on to its sides. Okay, so that is one effect. So that is one type of Bohr effect. Why is it called double Bohr effect? Because here there is one more phenomenon here. See, in the maternal blood there is more carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide enters from the fetal side to the maternal blood. So there is increased PCO2, which will cause increased release of oxygen from maternal hemoglobin. So here you can see that why is it called double Bohr? Because there is easier binding of oxygen to the fetal blood and easier release of oxygen from the maternal hemoglobin. So that is called double Bohr effect. Now we will see about the diffusion of carbon dioxide. How is the carbon dioxide transported? So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in fetal blood is only 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury higher than that of maternal blood. The difference is just 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury. That means, so how does carbon dioxide diffuse so easily? That is because even though the pressure gradient is less, it diffuses with ease because the diffusion capacity of carbon dioxide is 20 times more than that of oxygen. So because it is so much, because the diffusion capacity of carbon dioxide is so high, it can easily diffuse even though the pressure gradient is much less. Okay. Not only that, the PCO2 of maternal sinus is lower than 40 millimeters of mercury. And this also helps in easy diffusion of carbon dioxide from the fetus to the mother. In the maternal sinus also, in which this whole fetal blood is bathed, there also the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lesser. So these are the reasons why carbon dioxide can easily diffuse across this from the fetus to the maternal side. So that would complete the respiratory function. So remember, in respiratory function you have to write about the diffusion of oxygen, wherein you also have to write the 3 reasons why fetal RBC can be saturated well enough even though the partial pressure of oxygen is less. Okay. So that is nutritive functions. So not only oxygen, not only the respiratory function, we also have nutritive function. So which are the major 3 nutrients that are needed by our body? You know, it is glucose, fatty acids and amino acids. So we'll see how they are transported. So glucose is transported by a carrier mediated facilitated diffusion, just like we study in the renal system. Here it is transported by a carrier mediated facilitated diffusion. What about fatty acids? They are soluble in the membrane, but they are transported at a slower rate than glucose. And amino acids and ascorbic acid are actively transported across the membrane. They need active transport. And keto acids and ions are also transported across the membrane. See, not only the nutrients, we know that everything that mother eats, be it drugs or be it anything, all that can affect the fetus. So they also enter via the placenta. So various drugs can also cross the placenta, such as anesthetics, pethidine, morphine and antibiotics, etc. So these are the nutritive function. Mention about the 3 major nutrients: glucose, fatty acids and amino acids, and then mention about the different drugs. Next we will see about the excretory function. So what are the common excretory products that we know of? Of course, urea, uric acid, creatinine. So all the excretory products of the fetus like urea, uric acid, creatinine, all they diffuse across the placenta into the maternal blood. Okay. So that is the excretory function. Now the next function is immunological function. See, we know that basically fetus is a extra tissue that is growing inside the body, but still the mother doesn't reject it. So suppose we do a kidney transplantation, there are chances of it being rejected by the body, but the fetus doesn't get rejected easily. Why? Well, that is because the placenta protects the fetus from incompatibility which is produced between the mother and the fetus. So the placenta can prevent the immunological maternal attacks by destroying the T lymphocyte. The placenta will act like a shield so that all the T lymphocytes can be prevented from entering. So that is why we say that placenta is responsible for prevention of rejection of this fetal tissue. The prevention of rejection, we know that the mother has the ability to give passive immunity to the fetus, right? So how is that possible? See, placental membrane allows passage of some antibodies from the mother to the fetus, and this provides passive immunity to the fetus. So the placenta has a dual role. Not only it protects the fetus from being rejected, it also protects the fetus by providing passive immunity. Okay. Now the next important function of the placenta is endocrine functions. So we know that placenta is a main reason why the pregnancy progresses. Okay, it provides the necessary environment which is needed for the fetus to grow. So for that, the placenta produces a lot of hormones, of which the important ones are human chorionic gonadotropin, or otherwise called HCG, human chorionic somatomammotropin, or HCS, human chorionic thyrotropin, and of course estrogen and progesterone, relaxin, inhibin. Okay, so these are the major hormones that are produced. So one thing we have to remember is that initially before the placenta gets into action, it's a corpus luteum that helps in the maintenance of pregnancy. It is only after corpus luteum comes that the placenta comes into action. Okay, so we'll see each of the hormones one by one. Important placental hormones. So here we've got a picture which depicts how the quantity of the different hormones that are produced at each time. So here you can see that initially the gonadotropins will be released more, like human chorionic gonadotropin. But later in the pregnancy, you can see that the other hormones like estrogen and all will be increased. So this shows the different time period during which the quantity of the placental hormones can differ. So, or HCG. So it is produced from the syncytial trophoblast cells of the placenta. So what is the syncytial trophoblast cells? See, it is these cells here. So remember, this is a blastocyst. So here you can see that the trophoblast cells differentiate to form this syncytial trophoblast cells, and it is from these syncytial trophoblast cells that HCG is produced. And it is chemically and functionally similar to a luteinizing hormone, or LH. And it is first detected in the maternal blood 8 to 9 days after ovulation, or 6 days after fertilization, that is just after implantation. So see, just after implantation you will be able to detect this HCG, and that is why this is a very important test for pregnancy. So now, after writing these, you can also write about the functions of HCG. So the main function of HCG is to maintain the corpus luteum until the 4th-8th week of pregnancy. So see, I said that initially the hormones are produced by the corpus luteum and only then placenta takes over. So this HCG will help to maintain the corpus luteum until the 8th week of pregnancy. And then it will stimulate the corpus luteum to secrete progesterone and estrogen so that the endometrial lining can be maintained. So this prevents a menstruation. So that is why we need a proper bed for this implanted blastocyst. That will be provided by this HCG by stimulating the corpus luteum. It also stimulates the Leydig cells in male fetus to secrete testosterone, and that will cause development of the male and internal and external genitalia, which means this has a very important role in the sex formation of the fetus. It also suppresses the mother's immune response so that there will be prevention of rejection of fetus. And it stimulates adrenal and placental steroid hormone production. So what are the important functions of HCG? First, it maintains the corpus luteum. It helps it to secrete estrogen and progesterone so that we've got a proper endometrial lining. It stimulates the Leydig cells in the male fetus, prevents rejection of fetus by suppressing the immune response, and stimulates the adrenal and placental steroid hormone production. So now we'll move on to our next hormone, human chorionic somatomammotropin. So this word might seem big, but just see, somato means body, mammo means mammary gland, tropin means to grow. So it's a hormone which helps the body and the mammary glands to grow. Okay. So here again the source is the syncytial trophoblast cells or the placenta. The secretion starts around the 5th week of pregnancy, and it is proportionate to the size of the placenta. So only if the placenta is healthy, there will be adequate HCS levels. So that is why low HCS level is a sign of placental insufficiency. So see here, the placenta should be of adequate size, and only that. So that is a clinical or applied aspect of HCS. Okay. Now we'll move on to the functions of HCS. So the functions are similar to that of prolactin, and hence it was first named human placental lactogen because it was similar to that of prolactin, which helps in lactation. It is also similar to growth hormone because it causes formation of protein in the tissues. Okay. It decreases insulin sensitivity and increases glucose utilization in the mother, thereby making larger quantities of glucose available to the fetus. See, remember I said that HCS is a hormone that helps us to grow, or helps the fetus to grow. So for the fetus to grow, we need more glucose available. So HCS will make that possible. It will make more glucose available to the fetus by decreasing the utilization and decreasing the insulin sensitivity. Next, it will promote the release of free fatty acids from the fat stores, again to provide an alternative source of energy for the mother's metabolism during pregnancy. Okay, so remember, human chorionic somatomamotropin, it helps in growth and lactation. So first you can write that it helps in it has functions similar to prolactin, and that is why it is called human placental lactogen. Then next you can write about the growth factors. That means it is similar to growth hormone, causing formation of protein tissues. And then you can write about the increased availability of glucose for the fetus and increased availability of free fatty acids for the mother. So that these are the functions of HCS. Next we will see about estrogen. So estrogen is initially secreted by the corpus luteum and later by the sensatio trophoblast cells of the placenta. And what is the function of estrogen? See, estrogen will help in the enlargement of uterus and breast during pregnancy. See, we know that as the pregnancy progresses, the uterus enlarges in size, the breast enlarges in size, and all this is the function of estrogen. Next, it helps in relaxation of the pubic ligament so that there can be an easy delivery. The baby can come out easily because of the relaxation of the ligament. It causes enlargement of the fetal external genitalia and also relaxation of pelvic ligaments along with relaxing that whole delivery canal. So these are the functions of estrogen. It helps in enlargement of uterus and breast during pregnancy, relaxation of pubic ligament, enlargement of female external genitalia, and relaxation of the pelvic ligaments. Next, we will see about progesterone. So progesterone is initially secreted by the corpus luteum by the sensatio trophoblast cells, and the main functions are it increases secretion of the maternal fallopian tube. So basically it helps in the nutrition of that early embryo. That is why we've got an increased secretion of the maternal fallopian tube, and also it causes decidual cells to develop in the uterine endometrium. So both of which is for nutrition of the early embryo. Next, it decreases the contractility of the pregnant uterus and thus prevents abortion. Okay, so it it prevents spontaneous abortion. So this is a picture which shows that spontaneous abortion. So it basically, the progesterone will protect the fetus or the growing embryo from spontaneous abortion. It also helps estrogen prepare the mother's breast for lactation. So these are the functions of progesterone. So next is relaxin. So just like the name suggests, the main function of relaxin is to relax the uterus and the pelvic ligament and also soften the cervix at the time of delivery. So these are the functions of the endocrine functions of the placenta. But it will not be complete unless you also mention about the feto-placental unit. So what is feto-placental unit? So feto-placental unit is called so because the placenta and the fetal adrenals gland work together to form estrogen and fetal cortisol. So see, we've got a different set of hormones in the fetal adrenals and a different set of hormones in the placenta, and they work together to produce the estrogen and the fetal cortisol, which is further brought back to the maternal blood. So you have to know more about the steps of this feto-placental unit. So we'll see how. See, from the placenta we've got cholesterol, and this cholesterol can be converted to pregnenolone. This pregnenolone will cause stimulation of fetal adrenal, and the fetal adrenals will convert it to DHEA, which is dihydroepiandrosterone, and 16-hydroxydihydroepiandrosterone. Now this DHEA and 16-hydroxy-DHEA will be transported back to the placenta to convert it into estradiol and estriol. Okay, so see, cholesterol, the hormone, the enzymes for converting cholesterol to pregnenolone is seen in placenta, whereas the enzymes for converting pregnenolone to DHEA and 16-hydroxy-DHEA is in fetal adrenals. So the fetal adrenals will produce DHEA and 16-hydroxy-DHEA, and this will go back and produce estradiol and estriol. So we've got estrogen here, right? Not only that, in one more step, the pregnenolone can be converted into progesterone, and this progesterone can be converted by the fetal adrenals to cortisol, corticosterone, and androgen. So see here, the estrogen is produced, the maternal to the maternal side, estrogen is produced and fetal cortisol is produced, and this whole thing will work together as a unit, and that is why it is called feto-placental unit. So I'll just repeat the steps again. From cholesterol, pregnenolone is there, pregnant most of the fetal adrenals and produce DHEA and 16-hydroxy-DHEA. This will cause formation of estrogen, that is estradiol and estriol. Pregnenolone can be converted to progesterone, and this will be converted by the fetal adrenal to cortisol, corticosterone and androgen. Right? So see, pregnenolone, which is formed from cholesterol in placental membrane, moves to fetal adrenal and converted to DHEAS, which is then converted to 16-DHEA. DHEA and 16-DHEA move to placental membrane, where they are converted to estradiol and estriol. Progesterone formed in the placental membrane moves to the fetal adrenal to form cortisol and corticosterone. So this is the called feto-placental unit. So to summarize, when a question like functions of placenta is asked, you have to write about the respiratory function. Then you have to write separately about the diffusion of oxygen, about the 3 reasons, the double Bohr effect, and also the diffusion of carbon dioxide. You have to write about the nutritive function, excretory function, immunological function, which are relatively simpler. And then we've got the endocrine functions. See, placental hormones itself can be asked as a question. So that is why I've elaborated more on this endocrine function. Then you also have to mention about the feto-placental unit and draw that flowchart. So I hope this concept is clear. Thank you.